My name is Jolene Carter, 32, an architect who's been covering her parents' mortgage for the past 3 years. They were hosting their 30th wedding anniversary dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. I wasn't invited. Mom said it was due to limited seating, that they wanted to keep it intimate. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was too busy anyway. But when I opened social media that evening, the lie crumbled. Ava, my sister, had uploaded a photo, everyone beaming around a long table under golden lights, champagne glasses lifted. The caption read, "Family only. We finally have everyone together." I stared at the screen, the words stinging. Then I typed my comment, "Congrats, mortgage and taxes are all yours now." I hit send before I could hesitate. 5 minutes later, the post vanished. 10 more and 30 missed calls blinked across my phone. I didn't answer. I just sat there in my small Albany apartment, the glow of the screen lighting the dark room, realizing maybe I'd been uninvited long before the dinner ever happened. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd excluded me. If you've ever been treated like a stranger by your own family, keep watching. What happened next will make you rethink what love and loyalty truly mean. And when you finish this story, tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. It had always been this way. Ava was the sun, and I was the shadow following quietly behind. When we were kids, she'd draw messy stick figures for Mother's Day, and Mom would frame them like fine art. I once brought home a blue ribbon from a state science fair, but it was tucked into a drawer before dinner. Mom said she didn't want me to brag. Even as a child, I learned that Ava's smallest effort deserved applause, while my best work was simply expected. The pattern only deepened as we grew older. When the family car broke down, I was the one who wired money from my first real job. When Dad's medical bills piled up, I sent another check, pretending not to notice the silence that followed instead of gratitude. Each time there was a crisis, my phone would light up, not for conversation, but for a transaction. I told myself I was helping because it was right, but a part of me hoped they'd finally see my worth. They never did. Ava's life unraveled long before mine ever began to bloom. She married young, divorced young, and came home with boxes of clothes and a bruised ego. Mom welcomed her like a war hero. I still remember hearing her tell a neighbor, "Ava's doing her best, poor thing." When I visited that weekend, I offered to take Ava out to dinner, but she declined, saying she was too tired. That night, I overheard Mom telling Dad I didn't understand real struggle. I wanted to laugh. Paying off their bills wasn't struggle enough. Apparently, living in Albany gave me distance, but it also became proof of my supposed coldness. Every time I skipped a family dinner because of late meetings, Mom would sigh and tell relatives, "Jolene's too busy for family." I worked hard, earned every promotion, yet in their eyes, I was the daughter who drifted away. The truth was simpler. Being near them hurt. The closer I stood, the more invisible I felt. Dad, Robert, was a quiet man. He rarely disagreed with Mom. When she criticized me, he'd mutter, "You know how your mother is," as if that excused everything. Once, after a tense dinner, I asked him why he never spoke up. He looked at his plate and said, "Keeping peace is easier than being right." I realized then that his silence was loyalty. To her, not to me. The years passed, marked by phone calls that always began with small talk and ended with requests. "Can you help with the roof? Your sister needs a little extra cash." I gave, not out of generosity, but because I couldn't bear the guilt of saying no. It wasn't until recently that I saw the pattern. They only called when something was broken. When things were fine, I vanished from their world entirely. Sometimes late at night, I'd scroll through old family photos on my phone. Ava's arm always around Mom, Dad standing beside them, and me just off to the side, smiling, half-cropped out of the frame. It wasn't intentional, I told myself. But deep down, I knew it mirrored real life. There was no malice, only habit. I had become background. The reliable one. The invisible one. People say family is unconditional. Mine came with terms, interest rates, and unspoken debts. I was the safety net beneath their lives, stretched thin but never acknowledged. For a long time, I convinced myself that love meant sacrifice, Only now am I beginning to wonder if it was simply convenience for them. 1 week before the party, Mom called. Her voice was sweet in that overly careful tone that always meant something unpleasant was coming. She said she hoped I was doing well, that work must be keeping me busy, and that she and Dad were finalizing the seating arrangements for their anniversary dinner. I could already hear the hesitation forming before she said it. There were only so many seats at the restaurant, she explained, and things had gotten complicated with cousins and old friends confirming at the last minute. She said she hoped I would understand, that it wasn't personal, that she loved me very much. I sat at my desk, listening to her voice echo through the speakerphone, half distracted by the hum of my computer. The words didn't hurt right away. They just sat there, heavy, waiting for meaning to catch up. I told her it was fine, that she should enjoy the night. She sounded relieved, almost cheerful when she said goodbye. An hour later, a message from Ava lit up my phone. "Don't take it personally," she wrote, followed by a smiling emoji. I stared at it longer than I should have. Ava always had a way of turning sympathy into superiority. The text wasn't comfort. It was confirmation that I had been excluded, and she knew it. I typed a reply and erased it 3 times before finally leaving it blank. That evening at the office, Na noticed my silence. She was the kind of coworker who never asked unnecessary questions, but always knew when something was off. We had shared the same cubicle row for 2 years, and in that time, she had learned to read my moods. She asked if I wanted to grab coffee before heading home. I agreed, mostly to avoid thinking. At the cafe near the corner, she waited until I spoke first. I told her about Mom's call, about the limited seating, about Ava's message. Na stirred her drink slowly, her eyes calm but sharp. "They only love the version of you that pays the bills," she said finally. The sentence landed like a pin drop in the quiet air. I almost laughed because it sounded cruel, but also because it was true. Na didn't say it to be harsh. She said it because she saw what I refused to admit. I told her I had always been the one sending money whenever something went wrong, that my parents only called when there was a problem to fix. She nodded as if she'd already guessed. "Then stop fixing everything," she said. I wanted to tell her it wasn't that simple, that families don't just break cleanly. But the truth was, I didn't know how to stop. When we left the cafe, the air outside felt colder than it should have been. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, and for a moment I imagined Mom and Ava sitting somewhere warm, deciding where to place everyone for the dinner. I wondered if there had ever been a time when my presence felt necessary instead of inconvenient. That night, I went online and ordered a gift for them. It wasn't expensive, just a small silver photo frame engraved with 30 years of love. I thought it might bridge the distance, even a little. I wrapped it carefully, wrote a short card that said, "Congratulations. Wishing you both many more happy years." The next morning, I mailed it to their address and went on with my day. 3 days later, a box appeared on my doorstep. The return label was in Mom's handwriting. Inside was the same photo frame, untouched, with a note that read, "We already have too much." I stood there in the hallway, holding the box, unsure whether to feel angry or embarrassed. The words were polite, but the message was unmistakable. My efforts were unnecessary, just like my presence at their party. That evening, Ava called, her voice bright with that practiced concern that always made my stomach tighten. She said Mom hadn't meant to hurt my feelings, that it was just a misunderstanding, that I shouldn't be so sensitive. I told her I wasn't upset, though my throat felt tight. Before hanging up, she said, "You know how Mom gets when she's planning something big." I knew exactly how Mom got, but what hurt more was realizing Ava always defended her, even when she knew it was wrong. After the call, I sat by the window, watching the snow begin to fall. The city was quiet and my reflection looked tired. I thought about what Na had said, that maybe they only loved the version of me that provided, that stayed silent, that never asked for space at the table. For the first time, I wondered if love built on obligation was love at all. I didn't cry. I just felt a strange calm, the kind that comes after giving up on expecting more. I unplugged my phone and went to bed early, deciding there was nothing left to say. The next week would come, the dinner would happen, and I wouldn't be part of it. What surprised me most was how little that thought hurt anymore. Saturday night, my feed froze on a single post. I had just finished cleaning my apartment, trying to distract myself from the thought of the anniversary dinner happening across town. I wasn't expecting anything, yet the moment I opened the app, there it was. Ava's update, sitting at the top of my screen as if waiting for me. The picture loaded slowly, pixel by pixel, until it revealed everyone standing together in front of the restaurant. They were dressed in coordinated white outfits, smiling as if the night were a perfect portrait of love and harmony. At the center stood Mom and Dad, their hands intertwined, surrounded by relatives, friends, even neighbors I barely recognized. The caption read, "Family only. We finally have everyone together." My thumb hovered over the screen. For a moment, I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she hadn't realized how cruel it looked. But then I saw the comments below. Mom's name appeared first. Couldn't be prouder. Her words sat there like a stamp of approval on my exclusion. Dozens of heart emojis followed from family friends, messages praising how beautiful everyone looked, how close and strong the Carters were. Each comment was another quiet cut. I read the caption again and again, as if repetition might change the meaning. It didn't. The more I stared, the colder I felt. The white clothes, the glowing smiles, the perfect setting, they weren't just for celebration. They were for performance. My family didn't want honesty. They wanted image. They wanted to look united, even if unity meant pretending I didn't exist. My eyes blurred slightly, but I refused to cry. Instead, I scrolled back up, pressed the comment box, and typed, "What came naturally? Congrats. Mortgage and taxes are all yours now." It wasn't loud. It wasn't vulgar. But it was true. For 3 years, I had been the one keeping that house standing. Every check, every transfer, every quiet sacrifice came from me. That photo wouldn't even exist without those payments. I hit post and watched the words settle beneath Ava's perfect caption. Then I locked my phone and set it aside. 15 minutes passed before I picked it up again. The post was gone. My notification bar blinked nonstop with messages and missed calls. The numbers climbed fast. 10, 20, 30. Mom's name appeared the most. I didn't answer. I just sat there, staring at the phone vibrating on the table, feeling the weight of every buzz. When it finally stopped, a message appeared. "How could you embarrass us like that? You're being selfish." I put the phone face down and leaned back, letting the silence settle. The word selfish repeated in my head until it almost lost all meaning. I had been called many things in my life: cold, distant, too focused. But selfish was a new creation. My chest tightened, not from guilt, but from disbelief. After everything I'd done, after every bill I'd covered, every late payment I'd fixed, they still managed to paint me as the villain. I stood by the window, staring down at the street below. The snow had started again, quiet and persistent. Somewhere across town, they were probably still laughing, maybe already home from the dinner, full and satisfied. I imagined Mom recounting the moment I commented, Ava defending her post, and Dad saying nothing at all. That last part at least I could count on. I made tea just to give my hands something to do. The kettle hissed, filling the small apartment with steam. I thought about the past 3 years. About every time I logged into my bank account to send the mortgage payment, telling myself it was temporary, that one day things would be different. I never questioned why I was doing it. Family needed help, and that was what good daughters did. I didn't even put my name on the deed. I told myself I didn't need credit. But standing there, it hit me all at once. I hadn't just been excluded from their table. I'd been excluded from their gratitude long before. They didn't see me as a person anymore, just a resource. And that post, that perfect photo, was proof. They could erase me from their pictures, but not from the bills that kept their lives comfortable. The phone rang again. I let it ring. I knew if I picked up, Mom would speak first. Her tone dripping with disappointment, not remorse. She'd tell me that family shouldn't air dirty laundry online, that appearances mattered more than feelings. And she'd never realize the irony, that I'd been preserving their appearances for years. Eventually, the calls stopped. The apartment grew quiet again, except for the low hum of the heater. I sat on the couch, tea cooling in my hand, and thought of Na's words in the cafe. They only love the version of you that pays the bills. It wasn't just a clever observation. It was a prophecy. I took one last look at my phone before turning it off completely. The light faded from the screen, and for the first time that night, the quiet felt peaceful. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the hurt, something shifted. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was awakening. I didn't know yet. All I knew was that I was done being the invisible sponsor of their perfect image. 2 weeks passed and silence got expensive. I had stopped sending the mortgage payments the same day I decided to stop explaining myself. For 3 years, my account had released the same amount every month, like clockwork, without thanks or acknowledgement. The moment I cut that flow, the quiet that followed was heavier than I expected. The first week was still. The second began to hum with consequence. On Tuesday morning, my phone lit up with a message from Mom. The bank keeps calling. They said something about missed payments. Is everything all right? It was written with feigned confusion, the kind that hides accusation beneath politeness. I read it twice and didn't reply. A few hours later, she sent another. We didn't want to bother you, but they say it's urgent. The word urgent was her favorite tool for manufacturing guilt. I could almost hear her sigh between the lines, the practiced tone of a mother who believed love meant control. By Friday, Ava joined in. Her post appeared on social media, public for everyone to see. Some people forget who raised them, it read, paired with a photo of her holding Mom's hand. The comments were predictable: sympathy, validation, concern. Stay strong, someone wrote. Family can hurt the most, another added. Ava replied to everyone with heart emojis and teary faces, playing the role she knew best. Devoted daughter, loyal sister, victim of someone else's coldness. I scrolled through the thread once, closed the app, and let my phone slip onto the couch. I refused to give them the satisfaction of a reaction, but silence didn't stop the truth from catching up. 3 days later, an envelope from the bank showed up in my mailbox. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. I hadn't lived in that house for years, and every financial tie was supposed to be clean, except for the payments I'd chosen to keep sending. The envelope felt heavy, the paper thick, official. I tore it open and scanned the first page. My name was printed in bold letters across the top: Jolene Carter, borrower and guarantor. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The letter wasn't about missed payments, it was about a new refinance. The numbers were unfamiliar, larger, riskier. The house had been refinanced under my name 2 months earlier. I reread the page, searching for an error, a typo, anything, but every signature line, every identifier was mine. The next morning, I called the bank. After being passed through 3 departments, a calm voice came on the line, introducing himself as Ethan Davis, the account manager. Miss Carter, he said, I see your inquiry about the refinance. How may I assist? I asked him to confirm the details. He hesitated, then said, the refinance was processed in July. The primary borrowers listed are Robert and Evelyn Carter, with your signature authorizing the guarantee. My pulse raced. I never signed anything, I said. Can you send me the documents? There was a pause before he replied, we have electronic copies on file. The signature matches prior authorizations. It appears consistent. The word consistent sliced through me. Someone had used my digital signature, my saved authorization data from earlier transactions. I pressed further, asking for timestamps, IP addresses, and verification methods. Ethan's tone grew careful. Legally, I can release that through a formal request, but if you're suggesting fraud, we can begin an internal review. The room suddenly felt smaller as he spoke. The air turned sharp. I thanked him, noted his name, and ended the call. Then I sat there, staring at the bank statement spread across my desk. My parents hadn't just leaned on my help. They had crossed into theft, using the trust I'd built with them as their weapon. Messages from Mom kept coming. "Honey, we need to talk." Then, "You're being unreasonable." "Finally, you're tearing this family apart." I didn't answer any of them. Each message was proof that their love had terms. Care only existed when I complied. That night, I scrolled through old emails. There it was, an automated message from the bank 2 months old, labeled refinance confirmation. I'd ignored it back then, thinking it was spam. The attached PDF now revealed everything. The form had been digitally signed under my name, using the email and access credentials tied to the joint account I once shared with Dad for payment transfers. I'd left that access open, trusting they wouldn't abuse it. That trust became their entry point. I printed every document, highlighting every date, every code, every name. The stack grew thick, each page a record of betrayal. When I reached the last one, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from clarity. There was no misunderstanding left to mend. They hadn't stumbled into this. They had planned it. The refinance required 2 verifications, both cleared within 10 minutes of each other. Someone in that house knew exactly what they were doing. Later, as I stared out at the snow-covered street, I realized how quiet betrayal sounds when it stops being emotional and starts turning into evidence. For years, I had been their safety net. Now I was their collateral. I sat down, opened my laptop, and began drafting an email. Not to my mother, not to Ava, but to Ethan Davis. The subject line read, "Formal dispute of fraudulent authorization." My hands no longer shook. My breathing slowed. Each word I typed was measured, deliberate, precise. I attached the evidence and requested an immediate freeze on the account. When I hit send, the silence returned. But this time it didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. I wasn't frozen anymore. They were. By late October, the truth had gathered interest. The chill in the air matched the sharpness that had taken root inside me. I met with Clark Benson, a real estate attorney known for his precision and patience. His office was lined with case files, shelves full of quiet victories. He read through my documents silently, his eyes narrowing only once when he reached the refinance agreement. Then he leaned back in his chair and looked at me steadily. "Miss Carter," he said, "this is textbook forgery. The electronic authorization was reused without consent. Whoever accessed your credentials committed fraud." His words didn't surprise me, but hearing them spoken aloud made something inside me settle. It was no longer a suspicion or a betrayal I carried alone. It was a legal fact. Clark explained the next steps carefully, how we could report the incident, freeze the account, and initiate a civil complaint. I nodded through most of it, feeling a strange calm, like standing in a storm after realizing you cannot get wetter. When I left his office, the folder in my hand felt heavier than before, not because of the paper, but because of the clarity it contained. That afternoon, I received an email from Ethan, the bank manager who had helped me gather evidence. Attached were detailed transaction logs, timestamps, and system records, all pointing to my parents' account activity during the refinance. "I hope this helps you, Miss Carter," he wrote. "I'm sorry this happened." I thanked him, though no apology could mend the truth that my family had turned my trust into collateral. 3 days later, Ava's name appeared on my phone. Her message was brief. "Mom wants to have brunch? Just us. It's time to talk." I almost deleted it, but something in me wanted closure, not reconciliation. I replied, "Where and when?" Sunday morning, I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early. The place smelled of cinnamon and burnt espresso, the kind of comfort that clashed with the tension in my chest. I picked a table near the window, placed the folder beside my cup, and waited. A few minutes later, Ava walked in, followed by our parents. Mom looked immaculate, as though presentation could rewrite reality. Dad's shoulders sagged, his eyes low. Ava started with a smile too bright to be genuine. "Jolene, we're glad you came. Things got messy. Let's clear the air." Her tone was rehearsed, her charm a shield. Mom nodded softly, stirring her coffee with practiced ease. "We all made mistakes," she said. but we're family. We can fix this. I looked at her, then at the folder. Fix, I said quietly. You used my name for your loan. The words shattered like glass on tile. Ava froze. Mom's hand trembled slightly. Dad stayed still. That's not true, Ava said quickly, eyes darting toward Mom. You must be mistaken. Maybe the bank... I opened the folder and slid a printed sheet across the table. My name sat above the digital signature, time-stamped and verified. The bank didn't do this, I said. You did. Mom's lips parted, but no sound followed. Her face lost its polished calm. Dad's silence roared louder than any denial. The hum of the coffee machine filled the emptiness between us. I reached into my bag and drew out my phone. You want to talk about mistakes? I pressed play on an old voicemail, the one she'd left weeks before. Her voice filled the cafe, sharp and pleading. The bank keeps calling, Jolene. We need your help. You know we can't lose the house. You'll take care of it, right? The color drained from her face. Ava's expression hardened, as if anger could erase evidence. You didn't have to go this far, she hissed through clenched teeth. I met her eyes evenly. You didn't have to steal from me. Mom finally whispered. We only did it to keep everything together, for the family. I gathered the papers into the folder. Then keep it together without me. I stood, set the bill on the table, and added softly. I've already filed to remove my name from the loan and end all support. The bank and the court will handle the rest. None of them replied. Only the faint clinking of spoons against ceramic broke the silence. I felt no triumph, only release. The weight that had pressed on my chest for months lifted as I turned toward the door. Outside, the October air bit at my skin. Crisp, cold, but clean. Behind me, the cafe windows reflected their figures. Still seated, still small. Ahead, the street stretched open, quiet, waiting. For the first time in years, I walked without looking back. 3 months later, the house went silent. The street that once carried my mother's gardening songs and my father's cautious footsteps now held only the winter wind scraping against the shutters. The for sale sign that once marked their pride now bore a red sticker reading, Bank Owned. I passed it once on my way to deliver paperwork at the county office, and the sight felt haunting, like staring at a ghost I'd once protected. The foreclosure had moved swiftly. Without my payments, and with the fraud case pending, the mortgage defaulted within weeks. The bank repossessed the property before Christmas. The furniture went into storage, the garden withered, and the porch lights never flicked on again. Neighbors whispered, of course. Families like ours were meant to be respectable, not listed among foreclosures. Ava moved out first. I heard from Ethan that she'd been staying with a friend across town, sleeping on a pull-out couch in a cramped apartment. The same girl who once flaunted photos of family unity now erased every trace of those smiles. Her social media fell silent. When the bank's legal team reached out for her deposition, she ignored every message. That silence didn't last. A month later, the district attorney's office filed a civil complaint against her for falsifying financial records during the refinance. Clark, my attorney, forwarded the notice to me without comment. He didn't need to. The consequences had finally come home. Mom, meanwhile, found someone else to blame. She called once, long after the house was gone. Her voice was brittle, frayed. You didn't have to destroy us, she said. You could have helped. I didn't answer. There were too many layers of irony to peel away. She never mentioned the forged papers or the lies that led there. To her, I was still the ungrateful daughter who refused to obey. Dad stayed silent, as always. I wondered if he agreed with her, or if silence had simply become his way of surviving. Either way, it no longer mattered. The family I once tried to hold together had fallen apart long before the bank ever took the house. During the first week of February, I moved into a small apartment in Rochester. It wasn't large, but it was bright, with windows overlooking a quiet parkway where children walked home from school each afternoon. I bought secondhand furniture, assembled it myself, and for the first time in years, everything around me belonged entirely to me. There were no mortgage warnings, no collection calls, no voices demanding answers, just peace. Each morning, I brewed coffee and watched the snow drift across the city. Sometimes I thought of Ava, wondering if she blamed me or finally saw the truth. Other times, I remembered my mother's garden, how she used to say, "Nothing grows in the cold." She was wrong. Some things thrive only in the cold: clarity, boundaries, self-respect. When the final court order arrived, it confirmed what Clark had told me months before. My name was officially cleared from the fraudulent loan, the debt reassigned to the true borrowers. The judge cited deliberate misuse of authorization and intentional misrepresentation. Reading those words, I didn't feel triumph, only closure. It was the clean ending I never thought I'd receive. That same afternoon, Ethan sent a short email. "The case is closed. I wish you the best moving forward." I replied with just 2 words: "Thank you." There was nothing else to say. He had been professional, kind, and honest, qualities that felt almost foreign in the language of family. At night, the stillness of my apartment felt deep but never lonely. I learned to savor my own rhythm, to cook dinner for one, read without interruption, and let music fill the quiet. The silence that once frightened me became proof of survival. I no longer waited for apologies, explanations, or redemption. Some stories didn't end in forgiveness. Some simply ended. One evening, I found an old photograph in a drawer, a family portrait taken years ago in front of that same house, long before it turned into a court file. We looked happy then, perhaps because we believed we were. I stared at it for a while before sliding it back into the envelope. The past could stay archived. I had no use for it anymore. Life in Rochester wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I paid my rent, my bills, and slept without checking my phone for emergencies. I stopped measuring my worth in sacrifice. My peace didn't need witnesses, likes, or approval. It only needed space to exist. On my last night before spring, I stood by the window, watching city lights blur through the falling snow. It wasn't the life I once planned, but it was the life I chose. And as I turned off the lights and walked toward my quiet room, one truth settled in my chest like warmth. Peace was the most expensive thing I ever bought.